Hey everyone, I'm April. I'm partner and chief revenue officer from Hatch Duo. On today's episode, as you can see, we may have noticed a few different things if you've been following and watching us. We're shooting at our new satellite office in Hollywood, Los Angeles, and we've got a very special guest today, Bruce Hamilton, general partner at Everybody Ventures.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thanks for being here. We appreciate your time. I guess before we jump right in, just to give the audience some context, we did meet, a little over a year ago at our Malibu event that we threw for hardware, hardware folks, the hardware community.
Yeah, it was an interesting chance encounter with the Hatch Duo team. It was a really full event at the Soho House location in Malibu, and I feel like we just all hit it off, and we were kind of aligned with what we're looking at in terms of hardware and pop culture and consumer, and just happy to be working with Hatch Duo in the long term.
That's great. I remember just combing through your website and definitely saw, obviously the things that popped up was, the pop culture branding, the consumer passion, the bold product design that you're interested in. So it definitely sits really well with where Hatch Duo plays. And yeah, I was excited to meet you and was excited to introduce you to John and Mike, who are going to be at the event.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess from here, could you share a little bit more about your background and, what Everybody Ventures is, what you guys are essentially up to?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with going over what Everybody Ventures is. We're an early stage VC fund investing at the intersection of pop culture, consumer, and technology. We look for, on a high level, we're hyper focused on consumer. So we look at companies started from pre-seed to Series A, industry agnostic. So it could be gaming, entertainment, music, fintech, healthcare. As long as it's consumer, we're interested. And as you know, we have recently launched our new Fund 2, which we've introduced a new model that allows for accredited and non-accredited investors to become LPs at a minimum 3K. And the whole goal of Everybody Ventures essentially was to democratize venture capital and allow people to have access to a high reward yet high risk asset class. A lot of people have essentially just been left out of this opportunity to essentially invest in some of their favorite consumer brands starting up. So we wanted to build that vehicle out to, kind of open the playing field for all types of investors. But in terms of how I got to Everybody Ventures, I have a very untraditional path to venture. I didn't go to an Ivy League school, or I didn't have a traditional finance banking background. I started my career in the music industry. So was doing social media at Live Nation, moved over to Sony Music, Bros and A&R, Epic Records. So I've worked with artists like Travis Scott, Fifth Harmony, Mary J. Blige, Future. And then from there, ran a talent management agency for a few years, managing artists, songwriters, and producers. And then I completely left music. At the time, I just felt like there wasn't a lot of innovation happening in music. So it just felt like my run in music was done. And I left to become a startup founder. So I launched 2 tech companies, ended up selling my second one, and then started my VC journey from there, which, led me to launching Everybody Ventures in 2023.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So for the audience or anyone else that is interested in learning more about the VC space, since we're covering this episode from the VC lens, how would you explain it to someone that would be interested in working with you, or what that looks like?
I mean, VC at its core, just like on a 5th grade level, is we have pulled in funds from pensions, high net worth individuals, family offices. Essentially, we've pulled money to then invest on their behalf in hopes to get a sizable return for them within a 10-year time span. And every fund has their own thesis, whether it's AI, consumer, healthcare, and then you just really focus on that thesis. You invest in those companies at whatever stage you choose to, and then, the funds get a return if there's an IPO or an exit, or what we call a liquidation event. And then those funds then just get returned back to limited partners. And then hopefully other partners go out and they continue investing in more funds, and then that's how the whole cycle goes.
Nice. So from that, as a VC, at what stage do you feel like you bring the most value to a startup or to a venture that comes to you?
For me, ideally early stage. I think that's where I can come in and really help with like branding and marketing strategies, how you should be looking at like consumer acquisition, and then also brand partnerships. Coming from the entertainment space, I'm quite connected with a lot of the major media entertainment companies and consumer brands. And so kind of starting helping set up those partnerships and like really helping them grow faster than they know they were just kind of on their own.
You posted on Instagram the other day about taste, but it was about, beyond the spreadsheet, ultimately how to determine early on if, if it's a fit or if it's, kind of a winner in your eyes. You essentially use taste as your kind of like your due diligence. I loved that. So yeah, anything you want to add there that you haven't already mentioned, but yeah, I think it ties.
Yeah, I mean, I think taste is very important when it comes to consumer investing, especially for us where we say we invest in pop culture. I've always said pop culture allows you to predict consumer trends and consumer habits, but also it allows you to kind of decipher what's like a short-term trend or what's going to be around for a long time. And I think that is a missing piece of the puzzle that a lot of investors, especially in the venture capital space, kind of might get killed for this, but they kind of lack that taste, or they rely on the opinions of other people.
Right.
Whether they're waiting for, maybe their kids to tell them, or maybe they see it on Twitter or whatever social media platform. But I think by the time they're getting that data, you've already missed the wave. And so the important part of being an investor, especially a consumer, you're supposed to be able to see these trends coming long before everyone else does. You're supposed to be able to predict what people want before they even know they want it. And then that's what taste allows you to do. And for me, I guess my superpower coming from music, especially being an A&R, I was able to bring a lot of that skill set over, being able to find artists early, being able to predict like, hey, maybe this genre of music is not popping right now, but it's going to be popping in like 2-3 years. Let's find artists that we could start developing to be ready as soon as that trend ships over. And I think that I bring a lot of that into investing, being like, all right, this is what's happening right now. Then that means this next thing is going to come up as a reaction to this. So like, let's look at what the cycle is going to be and start investing in that. And like Rick Rubin has like one of the best insights on like what he does. And I kind of relate to that very heavily. He's like, my skill set is like knowing what my taste is and being able to express that accurately. And he's like, that's my superpower. And I'm like, I feel like that's kind of mine, is being able to articulate what my taste is, being able to point out what that is, and hoping that I'm representing a large chunk of a certain market with that guess.
That's awesome. I love that. So you were able to really cross-pollinate, bring in, your previous experience, and just being able to kind of, you have a certain eye, like a keen eye for.
Yeah, and I think there's so many similarities between music and venture capital. Like record labels and venture capital firms have almost the exact same business model. Just you're going out, you're finding acts early, you're putting money into them, and you're helping them scale and become big artists for early stage fund, finding companies early, putting capital into them, helping them do whatever value add that you offer to help those companies grow. It's just on the flip side, music gets paid. On the label side, they get paid as soon as the music goes out. For a firm, we're just waiting on an exit down the road, but same exact business model.
Interesting. How much, in your eyes, how much does brand really tip the scales for you?
For me, I'm a big brand guy, so brand tips the scale more than you think. I mean, if we just look at what exists on the market, Liquid Death took water, they put it in a can, and they branded the hell out of it, and now it's a unicorn. So that tells you right there, branding is very important. Or if you go to like a grocery store and you go to the bread aisle, and then there's tons of options for bread. The one with the best branding is going to stick out.
Right.
So there is no, you don't have to be like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think you just have to have a strong branding, especially now with millennials and Gen Z. They gravitate more to brands that resonate with them, whether they have like a charity aspect to it, or kind of a social conscious aspect to it. Branding is just very important, and so they'll be loyal to brands that speak to what they believe in, or like how they envision their life. And I think branding also, people want to see themselves using your product, especially in hardware. So that's where branding comes in. They want to see themselves using it. So you have to like create a world where they see themselves doing it. I've been trying to get founders to understand this concept of world building. And it's kind of like an elevated version of branding where it's more than just like slapping your logo on something, having a cool color, but creating an entire world around your product. Like, recently I was talking about using podcasts as marketing, or using music playlists as marketing, and then creating an entire world. I think A24 has done a fantastic job of doing world building where people don't even care what the kind of synopsis is of their movies. They've created a brand where they create these high level, low budget films where they allow film directors kind of creative freedom to tell these like really original stories, and people gravitated towards that. And so now they've expanded to launching a music label, which kind of ties into that. So now we're just going to let's bring in artists who are just going to do really creative music, and we kind of market that and we put that into our films. So it's a whole world. So I think a lot of brands should focus on building a world that people can see themselves in and kind of live in. And then they buy your products, they buy your services, because they live in this world.
I love that. Yeah. What's your take on teams that have product vision, but they don't have a clear market just yet?
I try to kind of stay away from them because they've just been so honed in on the product.
Yeah.
But not having a clear like go-to-market strategy or branding strategy also kind of tells me you haven't really talked to your potential consumers to see what it is that they want. So you might be building a solution looking for a problem, but you don't even know it because you're tunnel vision into building the best product possible. But it's hard to build the best product possible if you're actually not talking to your potential consumers. Right. And so it's always good to just start branding early, even if your product's not done. Start sharing, specs, renderings, obviously close to being done, to get people's excitement and start building up like those wait lists and saying is there an actual demand for this, instead of putting the product out and then just hoping people want this.
Yeah. If there's essentially a real problem or not, they're not sure what problem this solves, or if it's solving any problem that exists.
Yeah. So then that leads you to ask, like, is this actually a great product?
Right. So
are they just building something for themselves, hoping that people want that?
Right.
But I do say some of the best companies come from essentially solving your own personal problems.
Yeah. Kind of that's part of the journey. It's like, okay, it's my problem, but how big is this problem? Is it affecting, a small group of people, or am I finding out that this is a massive problem? But that's kind of part of the journey and the research and the homework. And
yeah, I think that's a big thing too, is actually figuring out like how sizable is this market, and like what's the actual ROI going to be on this, and is this something you really want to like hold in on, or you're like, maybe not right now.
Right.
Like, for example, I thought hoverboards, or I guess the electric mini scooters or whatever, I honestly thought they were like 10 years ahead with Duck.
Really?
I don't think society was ready for hoverboards.
Yeah.
At the time.
I thought they were
I hate
cool.
using the term hoverboards because like it's not actually a hoverboard.
Yeah.
But that was like the name that stuck. I don't think society was ready for it. It's a great piece of technology.
Yeah.
Micro mobile technology. We just weren't society. We just were not ready for it.
Why do you think that is?
Because we didn't know what to do. We were just abusing it, and and I was someone who was like, I would take mine to the mall, and I would rather run the mall with it. There was like a better way to do it, of like kind of coming up with like kind of treating it like a motorized vehicle, of like you have to be on like the streets and the sidewalk. And
Yeah.
I just think it was just like it was kind of like a bird line launch where it just kind of hit the streets, and then everyone was just like, oh, I can just ride this any and everywhere. And also, people didn't realize that there's like some sort of like learning curve to it. So obviously, there was talents videos of people falling,
Yeah.
hurting themselves.
I've ridden those and they scare me. And so I've never really done too much experimenting on
Yeah,
them.
and I think the thing that really kind of like was a nail in the coffin was people were buying like the super cheap ones with like really kind of like BS lithium batteries, and so like, and the instructions would tell you, hey, don't leave this on the charger all night. People were overcharging it,
Right.
and then they were just like they would just catch bug,
Yeah.
and then that was the nail in the coffin for hoverboards.
Yeah. What sort of red flags do you look for that maybe founders are unknowingly waiting? Like what are some of the ones that, feel like immediate no or disqualified?
Oh man, what have I seen? I've seen founders overpaying themselves in salary. But here's the thing: before everyone comes for me, I am a big champion of founders paying themselves a salary. But if you're raising, for example, I had a company that was raising, I think, a $2-3 million round, and then we went into due diligence. We found that the founder was planning to pay themselves $500K salary a year.
Whew.
And so we immediately were like, this is a problem for us, and and they didn't really have an answer to that, so we ended up passing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you find a lot of your answers in due diligence.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's,
but
that's
but
why
that-
it's due diligence, right?
That, and then also just kind of seeing, if founders are able to pivot if they need to, and they most likely will need to. Sometimes, they spend a lot of time so focused on their baby, this company, that they can't envision it any other way.
Got it. Yeah. That's
But the market is going to tell you to pivot in some capacity.
right.
So you kind of have to see if they're open to that.
Okay. That's a great point. As a VC, what is currently the biggest gap right now with VC and the understanding of hardware and hardware development? Like, what do you notice?
I think when I first got to the space, everyone was like steering clear of hardware. A lot of funds were like, we don't do hardware. And I think it's because they were like really terrified. They were already terrified of consumer, but then adding hardware, which tends to be capital intensive on top of that, is like, well, we're not even going to come close to this.
Right.
But I think things have started to change now with a lot of these like celebrity driven brands that have done very well, and just brands that have been able to generate a really good amount of traction and a lot of like a very loyal fan base. And I think now that people are building some really cool products using those same strategies, I think things are changing right now, especially in Los Angeles. I think in Los Angeles, there's definitely more of an appetite for investing in the hardware space probably than anywhere else. Because I would say LA is we're very heavy on consumer investing. I would say 60% to consumer, and then the other parts divided by aerospace and medtech. Yeah. But I think, that's the misconception, is like, I think in the beginning people were scared of hardware, but I think things have changed now. People are very open to it.
Nice. So last time we talked about something really interesting, just I guess to give context. We're talking about how in today's like culture and landscape, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on kind of short-term gains, versus long-term value. Do you recall that conversation?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you see that playing out? It's really translating across industries, really, with fast fashion, fast music. Like the music space is also shifting in that way, where everyone's just looking for ways to capitalize in the short term, and there's no less value on that long term.
I think I was using Hollywood as an example of this, of studios not wanting to take risks on original IP that much. And what they've been doing is like, we're in the era of like reboots and remakes and
Right.
unnecessary sequels to movies 20 years later.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to like get people to come back to established IP than to like start a new one. if they put a movie out, original IP out in theaters, and it didn't do that well, they could still bank on another run of revenue once it hit DVDs and like VHS. And so then a bunch of people would go and buy that. And then they would pretty much would be guaranteed to be profitable, if not break even. But now that's not the case because everything just goes to streaming. So there is no secondary run of transactions in theater and then streaming. And so now, the studios are like, oh, we don't want to take risks on IP. We don't put a lot of money in that. But I think with the quick evolution of the AI technology, I think that will now allow studios to take more of a risk on original IP because it won't cost them that much to make these projects now. And so everyone's kind of scared of AI. I actually think it's going to be fantastic. I think AI is only going to be as good as the person using it. And that's where taste also comes into play. Because if you have good taste, then you can make great things with AI. It's only trained on things that humans have created. It's not like that AI is going to be able to create something out of thin air by itself. It's just training on what it already knows, and then just referencing that to kind of give you an idea of what it thinks that you want. So that's where taste is going to come into play. And so the taste makers who really hone in on using AI, they're just going to like really create like fantastic creative projects, whether it's film or music. I think we might hit a new creative renaissance with AI. I know it sounds crazy, but I think we might hit a new creative renaissance.
What do you mean by that?
I think you're going to just start seeing film, TV, music from people we never would have thought we were going to get it from, because AI has now opened the door. It's now become a tool for creatives to just create new things now. The same way that Canva opened the door for people who traditionally didn't have design training, that they're now kind of like self-taught designers use Canva. I think AI is going to do that in terms of creative, and it's going to allow people to just make works of art that are just going to be like really innovative and things that you couldn't do before, or that people didn't have the ability to do before because they weren't deemed creative. But now they're just going to like take it and really run with it.
Yeah, I agree. This has been really great. You've been great. You've shared a lot of insights and been very informative for anyone that hasn't worked with a VC or doesn't know very much about the VC landscape. Anything else that you would like to share that we didn't go over? I know that you're speaking at a web summit in Vancouver.
Yeah, speaking of web summit in Vancouver, and then our fund too.
Yeah.
We've now democratizing access to venture capital. So our new fund 2 allows for accredited and non-accredited investors to become LPs at a minimum of $3,000, and every LP gets to vote on investments. And so we're really excited. So if you want to begin your limited partner, your LP journey, or just look at a different investment asset, come look at Everybody Ventures.
So yeah, if you guys are looking for a VC, Bruce here is who I generally would send our leads to. Feel free to hit us up. And then if you guys are looking to take your product idea to reality, you know where to hit Hatch2O up. If you enjoyed watching this, please like this video, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more Hatch2O content. Thanks for tuning in.